Gen Z is going to be the first generation in modern history that owns less than their parents. Not because they're lazy, not because they don't want things, but because every single path that previous generations used to build wealth has been priced out of reach. A house, a car, a retirement account with something real in it. These weren't luxuries before, they were just normal. Now they're not, and the numbers prove it. This isn't doom and gloom for clicks. This is just where the data points. And if you're Gen Z and you haven't actually looked at the numbers, you need to, because it's worse than most people want to admit. I'm gonna walk you through exactly what's happening. Not opinions, not theories, just the actual numbers and what they mean for your life. Let's start with the obvious one, housing. The median home price in America right now is over $400,000. In 2000, it was $119,000. Even after adjusting for inflation, that's nearly double. And wages? Entry-level salaries have gone basically nowhere in real terms over the same period. The math doesn't work, and it was never going to work for anyone trying to buy right now. Here's what that actually looks like in practice. To buy a median-priced home today, you need around $80,000 just for the down payment. That's before you paid a single mortgage payment. Then your monthly payment on top of that at current interest rates is somewhere between $2,500 and $3,000 before taxes, before insurance, before anything breaks. The standard rule is you shouldn't spend more than 30% of your income on housing. To afford a median home by that rule, you need to be making over $100,000 a year. The median income for Gen Z workers right now is $40,000 to $50,000. That's not a gap, that's a wall. And it gets worse. A lot of people think, okay, I'll just move somewhere cheaper. But the same thing has happened everywhere. Cities that used to be affordable 10 years ago aren't anymore. Austin, Nashville, Phoenix, Boise, all of them got hit by the same wave. Remote work spread the demand and the prices followed. There's no obvious escape hatch. And here's what makes it even worse. While Gen Z can't get in, investors and wealthy people who already own property are buying more of it. Between 2020 and 2023, institutional investors bought around 25% of single-family homes in some major markets. They're not buying to live in them. They're buying to rent them back to the people who can't afford to buy. Gen Z is literally paying someone else's mortgage while their own shot at owning disappears. The home ownership rate for people under 35 is at its lowest point since the 1980s. That's not a random blip, that's a trend, and it only points in one direction. Before Gen Z can even think about saving for a house, they're already carrying something their parents didn't have to deal with at the same scale: student debt. Total student loan debt in America is over $1.7 trillion right now. The average Gen Z graduate starts their working life with around $37,000 in debt. Some carry $100,000 or more, and they took on that debt to get a degree that gets them a job that pays the same in real term as it did 25 years ago. Think about that for a second. You pay way more for the education. You earn the same after. You start your adult life tens of thousands of dollars in the hole. In the first decade of your career, the years that should be going toward building something go toward paying off the cost of just getting started. College tuition has gone up 180% since the early 2000s. Entry-level salaries adjusted for inflation have gone nowhere. That's not a coincidence. That's the trap. You can't save for a down payment when you're paying $400 a month on a student loan. You can't build any kind of safety net when you're already behind before you earn your first paycheck. And you can't just not pay it. It follows you. It affects your credit. It affects what loans you qualify for. It affects every financial decision you make for the first decade of your adult life. And the people who built the system went to college when it cost a fraction of what it costs today. They paid it off in a few years on an entry-level salary. Then they bought a house at 24. That path is gone. It closed. And the people who benefited from it don't want to talk about the fact that it closed. They just tell Gen Z to work harder, as if working harder changes what tuition costs. And here's something that makes all of this worse. Gen Z isn't just dealing with expensive housing and student debt. They're trying to build a financial foundation in one of the hardest job markets for new graduates in decades. Tech layoffs hit entry-level positions first. Hiring freezes locked out entire graduating classes. And now AI is eating the exact jobs that used to be the stepping stones into a career. The entry-level roles that used to exist as a way in, the junior analyst, the assistant, the coordinator. Companies are replacing them or simply not refilling them when they're vacated. The ladder that previous generations climbed rung by rung is missing its bottom rungs. And economists have a name for what happens when you graduate into a weak job market. They call it a wage penalty. And it doesn't just hurt you for a year or two. Research from the National Bureau of Economic Research shows that graduating into a bad market creates earning losses that can last 10 to 15 years. That's not just a rough start. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars in lifetime earnings gone because of when you happen to graduate. You didn't choose the timing. You did everything right. You got the degree, built the resume, developed the skills, and you graduated right as the market decided it didn't need you yet. And the data says that gap between you and people who graduated just a few years earlier never fully closes in your lifetime. That's the thing about owning nothing. It's not always about what you spent. Sometimes it's about what you never got a chance to earn in the first place. Owning something doesn't just mean a house. It means having assets at all. And the car situation for Gen Z is its own kind of financial punishment. The average new car payment in America right now is $749 a month. For a used car, it's $539. Add $200 for insurance. Add gas. Add maintenance. You're easily spending over $1,000 a month on something that loses value every single day you own it. And in most American cities, this isn't optional. The roads were built for cars. Public transit either doesn't exist or is as unreliable you can't count on it. The US spends about $82 per person per year on public transportation. Germany spends $385. France spends $368. Because in America, public transit is seen as something for poor people, never gets the funding it needs, so it stays broken. And because it stays broken, you need a car. And because you need a car, you spend $12,000 a year on something that's worth less every year just to participate in basic society. Here's the real problem with that. That $12,000 a year isn't building anything. It's not gaining value. It's not going to be worth more in 10 years. It's just gone every single year. For as long as you need to get around, that's money that could be invested, that could be compounding, that could be building something. Instead, it's just disappearing into a car that's depreciating in your driveway. Meanwhile, the top 10% of Americans own 93% of all stock market wealth. The people who own assets that go up in value and the people who spend everything they earn on things that go down in value are not getting closer together. That gap is getting bigger, and Gen Z is almost entirely on the wrong side of it. Here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. The ownership gap isn't just about what Gen Z can't buy right now. It's about what not being able to own means for the next 30 years. Wealth builds on itself. That's how it works. If you own a house that goes up 4% a year, in 30 years that thing is worth more than 3 times what you paid. If you put money in the stock market returning 8% a year, $1,000 at 25 becomes nearly $10,000 by retirement. The people who get in early build wealth that multiplies. The people who can't get in stay exactly where they are. Here's a simple example. Person A invests $100 a month for 30 years at 8%. They end up with around $140,000. Person B invests $1,000 a month for 30 years at the same rate. They end up with $1.4 million, 10 times more. Not because they worked 10 times harder, just because they had more money to start with. That's how wealth works. And that's exactly the position Gen Z is in compared to the generation before them. Someone who gets $50,000 from their parents puts it down on a house at 25 and watches that house go up in value for 30 years, ends up with hundreds of thousands in equity they didn't have to grind for. Someone who starts at zero, spends their 20s paying rent and student loans, and doesn't get into the market until 35 or 40 starts a decade late. That decade doesn't just mean less money, it means way less money because of how this whole thing compounds. The Federal Reserve's own data shows this clearly. The top 10% of Americans own the vast majority of financial assets. The bottom 50% own almost nothing. The way wealth moves from one generation to the next, through houses and investments and inheritance, is getting more and more concentrated at the top. Gen Z isn't just dealing with a tough market. They're watching wealth move away from them in real time. And the worst part is you don't feel it while it's happening. You just feel the rent payment, the loan payment, the car payment, and every month you make those payments instead of building something, the gap gets wider and you don't even see it growing. There's one more thing keeping Gen Z from owning anything, and most people don't even frame it this way: healthcare. The average health insurance premium for a single person through an employer is now $8,435 a year. That's just a premium. The average deductible before insurance actually pays for anything is around $1,700. So you're paying over $8,000 a year and still paying the first $1,700 of any medical bill out of your own pocket. Medical debt is behind 66% of all bankruptcies in America. 530,000 families a year in the richest country in the world. Let that sink in. So what does this have to do with owning things? Everything. Because in America, your health insurance is tied to your job. You don't just need to work for the money. You need to work to stay covered. And that ties you down in a way most people don't fully realize until they actually try to leave. You can't quit a bad job to start something of your own. You can't take a real risk on something that might actually build wealth. You can't take 6 months to figure out a better path. Because leaving your job means paying $500 to $800 a month just for basic coverage, or going without and hoping nothing goes wrong. And for a lot of people, going without isn't even an option. One unexpected diagnosis, one accident, one thing that goes wrong at the wrong time, and you're looking at a medical bill that wipes out everything you saved. That's not a hypothetical. That's happening to 530,000 families every single year, and it will keep happening as long as your ability to get affordable healthcare depends entirely on whether you show up to work tomorrow. That keeps Gen Z exactly where the system needs them, at their desk, dependent, spending every dollar they make just to stay afloat, not building anything, not owning anything, just surviving. That's not freedom, that's a cage. And the salary makes it just comfortable enough that most people don't try to leave. And then there's one more thing that barely gets mentioned. Every single paycheck, 6.2% gets taken out for Social Security. That's money that goes directly into a fund that is projected to be depleted by 2034, 9 years away. Gen Z is actively subsidizing the retirement of the generation before them. Every paycheck, every month, year after year, paying into a system that by every projection won't be there for them when they need it. And they have no choice. It's not optional. It's just gone before the money even hits their account. Think about what 6.2% of every paycheck over a 40-year career actually adds up to. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars. Taken for a benefit that the people taking it openly admit probably won't exist in the same form by the time Gen Z is old enough to collect it. And nobody is fixing it. Politicians acknowledge the problem and do nothing because the people who vote in the largest numbers are the ones currently receiving the benefit. So the math keeps getting worse. The fund keeps shrinking, and Gen Z keeps paying in, not as an investment, not as savings, just as a tax for a promise that won't be kept. That's not frustration, that's just a fact. And it means that every financial plan Gen Z builds has to be built assuming Social Security is zero, not reduced, zero. Because depending on a system that is openly unsustainable is not a plan. It's just hoping someone else figures it out before it's your turn. So where does that leave Gen Z? Two options. The first one is the default. Stay on the path, keep renting, keep making the car payment, keep saving for a house that gets more expensive every year you spend saving for it. Hope that something changes before you're 50. That works for some people, the ones with family money behind them, the ones who timed it right, the ones making enough to outrun the numbers. For everyone else, it just means working harder and ending up in the same place. The second option is recognizing the game has changed and refusing to play by the old rules. Build skills that make money outside of a traditional job. Invest consistently even when the amounts feel small, because starting early is the only real advantage you have left. Be honest about where you live and what it's actually costing you every month. Look at countries where the same income goes 2 or 3 times as far. Countries like Portugal, Vietnam, Thailand, Colombia, where you can live well on $1,500 a month and actually build savings instead of just surviving. Stop chasing an ownership model designed for a different economy and start building something that actually works in this one. That's not giving up. That's not being a loser. That's looking at the actual numbers and making a decision based on reality instead of what you were told to expect. Gen Z will own nothing if they keep doing what they were told to do. That's just the truth. The path that worked for their parents doesn't work anymore. The numbers don't support it. The market doesn't support it. And waiting for someone to fix it is not a plan. The people who figure this out early, who stop chasing a version of life that was designed for a different time and start building wealth through what actually exists right now, those people have a real shot. The ones who don't will spend 30 years making payments, rent, car, loans, insurance, and at the end of it, they'll have nothing to show. Not because they didn't work hard, but because they kept playing a game that was already over before they started. The system is broken. That part is true. The question is what you're gonna do about it.